I'm a mother who cries. I'm a woman that bleeds. Don't take it out on me. I gave you love on the corner of love and jurisdiction. Got a passion for the mission of the chokehold, dead road. Motherfucker, love her face down in the kitchen. You wanted to laugh, but needed to cry, like needing a hug when you say goodbye. I gave you a love, the one that is free, like one of those doves flying out to the sea. Couldn't dare to give you what you want out of me.
All right, welcome to podcast 225 of Blazed Weekly News. Russell and Rachel riding shotgun this week here on podcast 225. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Good to see you in studio this week.
Always good to be here.
Bit of activity as we got things rolling on Monday with the special session got kicked off. And one of the first things they addressed was the hemp bills. And to talk about it this week, we've got a panel. Director of Texas Cannabis Policy Center, Heather Fazio, is with us, as well as Jasmine from Mindful Compliance there in Houston, and then Jay Maguire, political editor for Texas Hemp Reporter and Craft, joining us. And we do have a little segment we're going to insert at some point later in the show of our friend Todd Harris over at Happy Cactus. Todd got into a bit of an exchange with Senator Charles Perry on Tuesday at the hearing, and we had Todd comment on that bit of an exchange just a little bit ago, and so we'll bring that in later in the show today. But key points on today's show, guys, on podcast 225 here at Blazed Weekly News. Senior members continue to propose more banning on these hemp products, despite the governor's agenda to regulate. I think the alcohol industry is getting their money's worth from the lawmakers that are bringing forth this ban agenda all over again, Rachel. So any thoughts on this? Did you get a chance to see any of this on it's hard to watch, I know, every time, but I get your take just if you had seen it or not.
Yeah, it's deja vu, really. You know?
Yeah, very similar to I guess what happened back, I think it was April. But let's bring in our panel here, Carl, and let's jump over to Heather Fazio and bring Heather in. Thank you, Heather, for being on the show this week. It's great to, of course, get your opinion on movement so far. These guys got right off they didn't waste any time, Heather. They kind of jumped right straight to SB5 as the new bill. What's your take on the activity so far this week, Heather Fazio?
Oh, everything's moving at lightning speed right now during this special legislative session. As we all know, the legislature met earlier this year for the regular session, and Governor Abbott vetoed Senate Bill 3, and we have now seen it resurrected in the special session. As you mentioned, first day of session, Senator Perry comes out the gate with his bill. Immediately, they suspend the rules to host a last-minute hearing, which would be the next morning at 9 a.m. And I'm really proud of the movement. We saw people drive through the night to get to the Capitol to make sure that their voices were heard on this terrible bill. It's, again, Senate Bill 5 is Senate Bill 3 with just a couple tweaks to it. And I'll tell you this, it doesn't hit the mark. It misses the mark when it comes to Governor Abbott's veto proclamation and his call for special session, which he has insisted on regulation, not prohibition.
That's right. That's right. And I have notes right here. Governor Abbott's agenda, specifically, Abbott is calling for the legislature to ban all cannabinoid hemp products for those younger than 21 of age, consumable hemp products containing synthetics, and to regulate the hemp industry for adults to ensure that the products intended for human consumption do not exceed 0.3%. And again, to quote Governor Abbott, let me be clear, I stand in favor of doing all we can to protect the lives of children, but while protecting the liberty for adults with regard to THC levels being below 0.3%. And so it's clear that the governor's mandate, Jay Maguire, is to you know, regulate this industry. Is this a shocker for you, Jay, or Heather, or even Jasmine, as we, you know, right out the gate see a deja vu here of SB5 from Charles Perry?
I don't think so. I think it was something we expected, just not at the speed. Like Heather said, it's been lightning speed, and we have other issues that have kind of come to the forefront for this special session. So it's kind of not alarming, but it's expected, just not as quickly as it has come.
Yeah, things really move fast, Jay.
Absolutely. I mean, if you consider all the other things on the governor's call that are priorities, and I think probably, you know, the national politics involved with this, you know, sort of mid-decade redistricting that we're going through again. If anybody remembers the last time we went through that, I think it was 03 or 05. It was a bit of a bother. So the wheels could come off of this special session based on the fact that Governor Abbott has been asked by the president to come up with 5 more congressional seats for the Republican Party. They're going to redistrict. They're going to get rid of basically the some of the Black and Latino districts, and, you know, give them over to the Republicans. That could cause the legislative session to completely crater. So it makes sense that Governor Patrick would want to come out the gate really strong and, you know, bulldoze his way through. But now that he's gotten it out of committee, and as soon as it hits the House, what is he going to do? Like, hold those congressional seats hostage? He's built his brand around Donald Trump. So be very interesting to see how this shakes out.
That's an interesting point. Have you considered or thought anything about the congressional seats, Heather? Just thought I'd get your chime in on that. You know.
Yeah, well, certainly a controversial issue, no doubt about it. The Democrats are already talking about breaking quorum, which means they don't show up to work, and the House and the Senate can't do business. Normally, it's just the Texas House where they have that opportunity, where they have enough seats in the body to withdraw their consent and their participation. But now, because we have one Republican that's resigned to take a position at the comptroller's office, is Senator Hancock, we have an open seat in the Senate. That means that 20 members of the Senate makes a quorum, and there are 11 Democrats. If all 11 Democrats agree to walk out, the Senate is going to be at a standstill. They could do it for redistricting. They could do it for any issue. I don't know that we see that happen, especially for cannabis, because we have seen Democrats on the side of prohibition. We can't take them for granted. So if we're going to be serious about it this session, we have to make sure that we're shoring up votes both on the Democratic and Republican side of the aisle.
What was the last issue? They did this a few years ago, didn't they, Rachel? What was the issue, Jay, when members went to Washington and didn't come back? They did this, I think, last session, didn't they?
Well, the quorum break, or session before last, maybe
it was the session. There was some Democrats that did a quorum to DC maybe 1 or 2 sessions ago. You recall that, I'm sure both of you, Rachel.
2021, right after the ordinary. You know, when the census information comes out, you know, we do a decennial reapportion or redistricting. That's the usual way of going about things. But Texas has a couple of times, I think in 03 or 05. No, it was 05. And 05 and in 21 or 23. Sorry, brain's getting a little slow. But what happens is that in order to break the quorum, the Democrats had to leave the state. The presiding officers and the governor all have the ability to send law enforcement out after any member who is not showing up for work. So, you know, they've gone to places like, and I think in 05 it was Ardmore, Oklahoma, which is not really a garden spot by any, you know, stretch of the imagination. They weren't exactly having a good time, but they held out for quite a long time. Still didn't matter. Tom DeLay, who was at that time in the majority whip, he got what he wanted. Some of those Democratic seats went over to the Republican side. And 21 or 23, same thing. They were leaving the state because the maps were unfavorable to the Democrats. But now what's going on is a little bit different. This is really pretty extraordinary. I mean, there is nothing about the maps that we have that the Justice Department should have a problem with, according to everybody that I've been listening to. Senator Huffman, herself a former prosecutor, was in charge of redistricting, drawing those maps. She testified in court that there were no, it's basically race blind opportunities for, minorities to participate is what the law requires. But this is Donald Trump's Justice Department writing a letter saying that they think that our maps are drawn along racial lines. And that's why the governor, was asked to put it on the call. I think it's just it's a ruse. It's an excuse.
Well,
so I don't blame the Democrats if they want to leave, because I think it's, they're going to lose even more influence.
Heather, Fazio, let me ask you, with the lack of the movement, well, I mean, it's just if senior members of the Senate are going to continue with this ban notion, I think we may have different results in the House now compared to the earlier this year. But what happens if this goes back to the governor, Heather, and the governor says, "Wait, I called for regulation."
Mm-hmm. Well, I fully expect the House of Representatives to stick to the governor's proclamation, to stick to regulation. We've already heard from conservatives across the state who voted for prohibition because that was what was on the table, and they felt a lot of coercion from the Senate and particularly the lieutenant governor. Well, they're free of that now, and they're deciding that they're going to stand with the governor and go for regulation. So it's great to see these conservatives really figuring out that regulation is the right approach. They've heard from their constituents, and I know that they're working on drafting a bill now. The question is, will there be a standalone cannabis bill or hemp bill, or will they go ahead and overhaul Senate Bill 5 when it comes over from the Senate? And rumor around the Capitol is that the bill in the House will not be going to State Affairs like it did last time. Instead, it's going to be going to the Public Health Committee, which is a whole different group of people who have a focus on health. And I think that that's a good thing. State Affairs did an outstanding job overhauling Senate Bill 3 during the regular session. And I hope that the Public Health Committee picks up the ball and carries it across the finish line so that the House can finally pass a good THC regulation bill.
Rachel, do you have anything for our panel?
I'm curious if any of you saw the Houston Chronicle article that was published this week. Greg Abbott, he's quoted as saying that basically the products that will be on the shelf will not be intoxicating. And I thought that was, kind of a little bit of backpedaling for him. And then it's also like, does he just not understand how cannabinoids work? What do you guys think?
Really quick too, just being in the Houston area, I've been kind of staying on top of everything out here and talking with some of the people at the Houston Chronicle, and it's just really interesting how the verbiage has been used. I don't think he's really defined what intoxicating is in his interviews, and I really think that that's an important thing to note, because it really does matter. It comes down to those definitions. It comes down to what will be intoxicating. In some states, we've seen people use intoxicating and non-intoxicating to just mean above or below that 0.3%. So it's going to be a definitions issue, I think.
Yeah, and I just feel like there's so much confusion. I don't think the lawmakers understand, really. I don't think Greg Abbott's that educated on the ins and outs of the plant. That's the vibe that I get reading his interview.
Let Heather, do you have a comment?
Yeah, that's my take also, is that he's kind of into the groove of talking about this. He seemed to stumble a bit, referring to it as 3% THC, which would a lot of THC. You could get into 3% on a gummy or a drink. But, I think that that's just a matter of semantics and getting that wrong. But then he did talk about 3 milligrams per serving. And I think that is just too low. It's unreasonably low. It means that the black market, the illicit market, is going to thrive because people are going to be able to get higher quality products outside of the legal hemp regulated infrastructure. So, I hope that the governor has his ears open to hearing from advocacy groups. Obviously, 10 milligrams is what was passed out of the House committee last time around. I hope that we can get closer to 10 milligrams. We may end up with something like 5.
Yeah, and 5's not a bad thing, I think, Heather or Rachel. That's not a bad. But I do think that the lawmakers are still trying to figure out the vernacular, and I think they're wrapping their head around this. It's new for them. We've been covering this for 5-6 years, a lot of us, Jay. So that would be tough if we didn't get any measures at all placed, and if we somehow come out of the summer with no regulation. I think that would be unfortunate, because our industry wants age gating measures. And do you think that moving forward with little or no change at all, Heather or Jay, is that a win really for Texas? Either of you?
It's certainly not a loss. We definitely want those age restrictions in place and preventing youth access. We want all of those things.
Yeah.
But if nothing happens, we end up just moving forward and regrouping to get some meaningful legislation passed in the next session. But I don't think it comes to that. I think that if anything, if nothing passes this special session, this first called session, I think that we go to a second special session. We go for 30 days. I foresee that is a very real possibility, because Dan Patrick doesn't seem to be bringing himself out of this corner that he's painted himself into. It's going to be hard for him to do that. And maybe the governor, with those statements, is helping to give some space for the lieutenant governor to say, yes, it's going to be low dose. It's not going to be intoxicating. You have to have a few in order to find any impairment or enjoyment from these products. But maybe they're just trying to make some space for the lieutenant governor to come out of that corner and for them to find some agreement on regulation. But there's a good chance that the lieutenant governor does not agree to whatever the House passes, and we end up going to a second special.
Yeah, I think that's real possible as well, Heather. I think that if they come back with more ban and more enforcement, and there's no bending from the Senate whatsoever, I think the governor's just going to say, no, get back to it. I told you I want regulation. Go back. You guys don't get any summer break at all. You'll get this figured out. And so I think there's a very strong possibility of that also happening. We're going to take a commercial break. Heather, I hope you can come back with us, maybe if it's just a little bit longer. We'll get you out of here. But this is a great panel, and we're going to talk a little bit about maybe these taxes and some of the breakdown on some of the bills that were filed just in the last few days. 42, Representative Nicole Collier, HB 160 from Charlene Johnson, new bill from Jessica Gonzalez. HB 195 was also filed, I think, this morning. So stay tuned, guys. We're going to take our first commercial break here on Blaze Weekly News, and we'll be right back. Podcast 225 rolls on with our panel discussion this week.
Green Botanicals, your #1 source for CBD, THC, and hemp-based products in Texas. Located in New Braunfels, Seguin, and San Antonio, Texas. Our CBD dispensary offers state and federally legal THC. Green Botanicals has been voted best CBD dispensary in New Braunfels, Texas, offering gummies, flower, beverages, and alternative medicine that is ushering in a greener future to the Lone Star State. Green Botanicals is your #1 source for education on the health and wellness benefits of THCA, CBD, and other legal hemp products in New Braunfels, Seguin, San Antonio, and the surrounding areas. Showcasing the best hemp flower bar in Texas. Stop on by and let our knowledgeable staff guide you in the right direction. Stop by our store or visit us online at greenbotanicals.com. That's GRUENE, botanicals.com. Dama Botanicals is proud to support the Texas cannabis industry and the work of Blaze Magazine and the Blaze Weekly News Podcast. Dama Botanicals is on a mission to advocate for the education of our community and the destigmatization of cannabis and hemp. We do that by providing high-quality products and services to Austin, Texas, and surrounding areas. Local, loud with Austin roots. Visit DamaBotanicals.com now and use promo code STOCKYOURSTASH and save 20% off your entire order. Hemp is legal for now in Texas, so come on by our store at 1311 South 1st Street in Austin or visit DamaBotanicals.com. Community-driven brands like Dama Botanicals are here until the wheels fall off. Stay informed, stay positive, stay blazed. DamaBotanicals.com. That's DamaBotanicals.com.
All right, welcome back to Blazed Weekly News, podcast 225 this week, as we are now back 4 days into the special session as the Governor Abbott has requested some sensible regulation for our industry here. And so we are opening up the panel this week. We, again, joining us is Jay Maguire, Heather Fazio, and Jasmine Brennan. Jasmine with Mindful Compliance from the Houston area, and then Jay with, again, political editor for Texas Hemp Reporter and co-founder of Craft, and then we all know Heather, director of the Texas Cannabis Policy Center. And I reached out to you over the weekend there, earlier in the week, Heather. I didn't realize, but it makes sense for you to postpone your cannabis your policy conference. I didn't realize that. This is affecting your conference event until we kind of get this figured out.
Yeah, it kind of breaks my heart to have to change the date and push back, and we're still working that sorted out. But we're living in extraordinary times right now, really going through some growing pains and having to be subject to the legislature's whim. And so if we end up going to that second special session, the conference is right in the middle, and you can't talk policy if the policy hasn't been sorted yet. So we're going with the flow and trying to navigate these obstacles and just trying to focus on the mission right now, which is getting the best policy possible. And there's a number of things that are wrong with Senate Bill 5. Of course, it's an outright prohibition bill. But one of the biggest things that we oppose within that legislation are the criminal penalties for even simple possession. Not only is it a Class C misdemeanor, which, Senator Perry pushed back on me during my testimony and saying it's not for the first and second offense. It only goes up to 180 days in jail after the third offense. But the fact is that people will pay their $500 fine and take a permanent criminal record, and not just for a normal Class C misdemeanor, but for a criminal drug offense that carries permanent criminal collateral consequences. That's hindered access to education, employment, housing, child custody. These are significant negative consequences that come along with even a Class C misdemeanor. But what he failed to acknowledge is the fact that not only is there a penalty for the possession of a product with any amount of any cannabinoid other than CBD and CBG. That includes products like CBN, for example, a non-impairing cannabinoid, but also a compounded penalty of a Class B misdemeanor if that product is not registered properly with the Department of State Health Services. And we know that those products can't be registered because they're not allowed. So that would be compounded penalties, Class C and Class B, facing up to 6 months in jail for these products that are federally legal and may or may not even be impairing.
Yeah, that's really ridiculous, and I don't understand it. Was the penalty part also in place in SB3, Heather? Because we talked about that, I think, a few months ago when you were on before. But have these penalties gotten harsher with SB5 than SB3?
It actually got better. We saw
Okay.
SB3 had Class A misdemeanor penalties in place for possession.
That's right.
Thankfully, Joe Moody led on that, and he had amendment first just for minors to bring the penalties down and offer second chances. And then on the third and final passage of the bill, he had another amendment that reduced the penalty to a Class C misdemeanor. And thankfully, I do appreciate Senator Perry including that language in Senate Bill 5. But it's still not good enough. That was a last minute try to salvage, keep some people out of jail, do the best we can. If we're starting over, we need to get rid of those criminal penalties. There is no circumstance where a peaceful person should be going to jail and having a criminal record for the possession of hemp products. It's absolutely absurd, and we need to push for getting rid of those criminal penalties for possession.
Tuesday on the hearing, guys, the argument kept coming up about taxes and how much this was going to cost Texas taxpayers for enforcing these products. And I thought that was a rather moot point, Jay or Jasmine, if you want to comment on this, because the tax generated from the plant was over $264 million alone last year. So, it's kind of a moot point when they say, "Oh, we can't afford these for these products to be legal because of the heavy burdensome it's going to cost our taxpayers, or it's going to cost law enforcement to regulate." Any of you care to comment on that? Because I thought that was kind of a non-argument.
Well, I'll go ahead and say that when we regulate these products rather than prohibiting them, we're not asking law enforcement to regulate. We're going to be regulating through an agency where they handle things administratively. We're not asking law enforcement to be going and enforcing these regulations. Instead, they can focus on real crime. We have real crime that's not being solved right now because law enforcement's distracted with all kinds of crimes on the books that frankly shouldn't be there. We're an over-criminalized society here in the land of the free. We can do better, and this policy, starting out with regulation rather than prohibition, is a great place to start.
If I was a rep right now, I would be so annoyed by this whole situation, making us go through this again. But, there's a lot of reps that are going to have to really put their money where their mouth is right now, because they've come out on social media basically begging for forgiveness. So, it's like, do you guys think that we're going to see them change their stance, or are they going to continue to just, try to please their party, or AKA Dan Patrick and Charles Perry?
I think within each party, there's kind of the factions of whether or not they're going to support. So it's just, I'm guessing at this point, they're trying to figure out which one is going to be either the most beneficial to their constituents or to their own campaigns, or maybe both. I mean, it just comes down to their I guess, priorities, and to whatever their constituents' priorities are going to be too.
Let me change the subject to synthetics. I keep hearing the dialogue all during the week, guys. Synthetic products were outlawed in 2011, Heather. Isn't this just a talking point by prohibitionists, Jay? Either Jay or Heather, I'd like to get your comments on this, because, I mean, we know synthetics were outlawed in 2011 in Texas, I think federally.
Well, and go ahead, Jay.
Please, Heather.
We welcome prohibition and reiterating prohibition on synthetic products. There can be other mechanisms of approval. We have synthetic medicines that are on the market. It doesn't need to be a scary thing, but there are mechanisms for approval. If you're starting in a lab and finishing in a lab, definitely there are some checks and balances there. But what I think is important to make the distinction about is the distinction between truly synthetic products that are manufactured in a lab, start to finish. They're not cannabinoids. They mimic cannabinoids and the way that they work with the body. They're conflating those products with converted cannabinoids, the conversion process of CBD into products like Delta-8. This is not a synthetic product. I've heard the term semi-synthetic. I've heard the term artificial. I've landed on the term converted cannabinoids. I think that it helps to talk about it in that way where it's accurate. It's talking about there is a chemical conversion process, but that can be done safely. We test for residual solvents. Of course, it comes down to the department stepping up to the plate and actually doing that to make sure that the products that are on the market are actually safe for consumption. But assuming that they're going to step up and do that, there's no reason why we can't have converted cannabinoids on the market, in addition to the naturally extracted cannabinoids straight from the cannabis plant.
Yeah, thank you, Heather, for saying that, because I think that's that needs to be it needs to be talked about. And converted products is a great way of translating that language. Anyone shocked by the committee and Jay, or I know Jay and I were on the phone when the dog and pony part of the testimony was being given. I apologize to Todd Harris or yourself, Heather. I got tied up with work and I didn't get to see all of you guys giving testimony. I had some coffee in the morning. I had a conversation with Jay Maguire on the phone, and it's so hard to, watch the Prohibitionists come out and do their song and dance. But I do think, guys, and let me get your take, all four of you, on this. It looked to me, Heather, Jay, like it was these lawmakers are doing their song and dance for their alcohol prohibitionist paycheck that they received back in March or February of this year. Is this something I'm missing here? Because there was no change in the testimony given by these guys Tuesday morning. And Jay and I kind of talked about this, and it was hard to watch. And of course, Jay pointed out, Russell, the battle's going to be in the House. But Jay Maguire, let's get your take just on how hard sometimes it is to watch that as as advocates for the plant here in the Lone Star State.
I mean, everything from hearing, can I say the word bullshit? Hearing the bullshit
That's fine.
And repeated as though it's the truth, because it's become the accepted, received wisdom among the people who are, prohibitionists, and knowing that they're wrong. And knowing that they are impervious to the facts, that's painful, because you can't have a fair and reasonable discussion with people who aren't working with the same set of facts or even living in the same reality we are. Look, these guys are prohibitionists for more than one reason. I understand, for sure, the liquor lobby and the beer lobby probably have a lot to do with it. And I'm sure the medical marijuana industry, I suppose, if you want to call it that, may have something to do with it. But I'm pretty sure a lot of this is just ideological. And Dan Patrick has made his entire career, and he's the most successful politician that I can remember in Texas history, just in sheer terms of getting what he wants. It's move to the right. The further to the right he goes, the more successful he seems to be. And he's talking to an ever diminishing audience. Most Texans don't agree with this, but they don't necessarily have the intensity of giving a hoot that those of us who advocate for the industry or people in the industry do. And I think probably that lack of intensity, sort of the diffuse nature of the support for legalization of marijuana or support for hemp, is probably why he's pushing this, because he gets to define terms in the Senate. He gets the headlines, all of the papers and media posts basically repeat what he's saying, and it's the damnedest thing, man. It's just, up is not down, and black is not white, and the sky is blue in my world. I don't know about Dan Patrick's.
Let me get all of you guys can talk on this. It's we mentioned earlier in the year, I mean, just a couple of months ago, how James Tallarico in Round Rock here was voting for sensible regulation, but when it became an all-out ban, he voted against it. All of you must have been aware of his 2 or 3 minutes there on the Joe Rogan podcast last week, guys, where he mentioned that big alcohol was behind Dan Patrick and the reefer madness kind of propaganda that was going on against hemp. Do you he kind of shed a little light there, I think, Heather, but it's no secret that, clearly this is there's some big marijuana and alcohol industry that would like to see happily see these hemp products banned, Heather.
Well, I don't know about big marijuana. These companies have been struggling for 10 years since this has been enacted. So they certainly are involved here, but I don't know if I'd categorize them as big marijuana. We're just seeing some conflict between the two sectors of the cannabis industry here in Texas. And, for me, I think it's real plain and simple. There's room for parallel programs on both sides of this. There's no reason that we can't do that. In fact, there's all the reason to do that. Everybody who wants to use cannabis should be able to access it safely and legally. And if that's patients having access to maybe higher milligrams of THC, certainly they shouldn't be paying taxes. But that would be the distinction. The rest of it's all the same. Cannabis is cannabis. People enjoy it. Let's make it legal and safe for everyone to access. Adults to access, let me clarify.
Right.
Good thing to clarify that. So, one thing that I think is really missing from the conversation that I haven't really heard brought up at all is like the maybe a bill to allow people to grow their own plants. Like, why aren't we seeing that? I feel like that would be a good way to eliminate a lot of the safety concerns, like just, if people just grew their own for personal use. Do you guys think that anything like that could be on the horizon, or why is it missing?
Yeah, is that a session or two away, Heather? How far are we away from maybe having our own plants in Texas?
Yeah, well, it's really been a non-starter for so many years, but now we've gotten to the point where we've opened up this program significantly, and next time around, we absolutely need to be prioritizing things like that when we are opening up the program more. But I want to take this opportunity to say that, while I appreciate the compassionate use program, there are significant flaws, and one of the flaws is that there are no real patient protections. We did see a provision included in House Bill 46 during the regular, which passed into law, that does protect the privacy of a patient in the registry. And that's a good thing. I appreciate that, but it doesn't go nearly far enough. We have patients who have child custody being jeopardized because even though they're legal teacup patients, they're still testing positive for THC and losing custody of their children. We have people losing their jobs because they're patients and testing positive. People that are having their probation revoked. I just heard about a story up in Northeast Texas. This man is facing 7 years in prison because he tested positive as a legal patient under his probation. These kinds of patient protections have to be a priority next time around.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. One of the governor's agendas, I believe, is he thought that there should be another agency, Jay. And Jasmine, you could comment on this too. There's been talk of the government's agenda to put another agency at some point in charge of these products. And I know Dishes is in charge of it today, while the DPS is in charge of the teacup program. But how far away, Jasmine or Jay Maguire, are we from legislation getting out there that takes this out of DPS or Dishes and just gives it to the Texas Cannabis Commission? Maybe something new like that. Maybe we need a Texas Cannabis Commission. Any of you of our panel have a thought about that? Maybe coming down the road in future sessions.
I couldn't even say how long it would be away, but I do think it's a ways away for sure. I mean, having worked as a regulator, it's difficult already trying to kind of manage these programs, and even from there, they sometimes consolidate these programs under different agencies that already exist, and they all have leases, and it's a whole thing. I mean, Jay can probably elaborate a little bit more on that too.
Yeah, your thoughts, Jay Maguire?
Russell, Texas does not like to expand government. I mean, we don't like to raise taxes. We don't like to expand government. We don't want to bring gaming. We don't want to have too much revenue, And so I think the idea that we would have a cannabis commission is pretty far-fetched. Okay. However, it is absolutely one of the things that if you noticed that Senator Perry said about the industry is that we weren't trustworthy enough to self-regulate. I absolutely am convinced that we can self-regulate. One of the organizations I'm helping to stand up now
work with us
is about making sure that the product in the package is actually what it says it is, and that the COA that is attached to it through the QR code is legitimately the COA for that batch. That is a licensing kind of situation. And I could see perhaps, some entity, some sub office at the comptroller's office, somebody at TDLR, Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, could easily take on the role of, okay, guys, you're going to self-regulate. We've got these organizations out there that are claiming to be like third-party validators of the COAs and of the training for the people who are selling them. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we do that? We could write that into law, and nobody in the industry, I think, would probably bat an eyelash about it.
Right. Heather, let me ask you, where are we at with, I mean, you're kind of in the trenches in this area, and I've taken a step back, at least from the groups. I was in the first few years here, my first 5 years, I was kind of involved with a group or another. Are the agendas, are people coming together more, do you think, coming under this special session? I thought Mark Bordas thought a few weeks ago when he was on the show, he felt like the biggest challenge was the unity within the different groups advocating and lobbying for various agendas. Are we getting a sense of unity on the backside of this? I mean, you might be a little closer to the groups yourself. I'm just kind of wondering how we are on that, because I think we're getting there, but I'm really not a part of that anymore, and I don't know how everybody is on the back end on agreeing on everything policy wise, but you would have a better sense for that.
Well, there are so many layers of politics happening now that the cannabis industry is growing. There are multiple different groups, and there's lots of dynamics at play, different opinions, different personality types, and all of that has to be taken into consideration as we continue to grow. And, definitely there's still some defensiveness between organizations to a degree, but I absolutely see those barriers starting to fall.
Yeah.
We all seem to be coming in line with policies. There's going to be disagreements down the line, but having open and honest conversations with each other about those disagreements can help either sway the other person, or it can be an agree to disagree situation. I think the biggest thing is having integrity, making sure you're honest about where you're coming from and why you've come to these conclusions, and being open to working with and collaborating with others. And I appreciate the position that I've been in to work with the people in all different kinds of groups, all different political persuasions and perspectives. And I think that's what makes the cannabis community really great, is that we have so many different people from different walks of life, different ideas, that's going to help us come to the best type of policy possible as we move forward and we grow through these challenges that we're experiencing now.
Heather, that's a great point. And I think, imagine guys, if they call for a second special session, or even, God forbid, a third, there will be no barriers between any of us policy wise, Heather. if we end up in a second or third session this summer, we're all going to be real close here before we get this thing figured out, Jay Maguire. So that's a great point. Stay right there, guys. We're going to take another quick commercial break. We'll come up back with about 15 minutes left on the show this week. But I thank you all for being a part of the conversation this week, as we have all just been thrown right back into the legislative process this week with the special session going on. So great panel this week. Podcast 225 rolls on. Rachel and I will be right back. Blaze Weekly News.
Sergi & Associates specialize in cannabis and hemp law cases here in Texas. Has your store been raided? Do you require municipal litigation? Seeking to trademark your brand? David Sergi is an international cannabis lawyer, and he represents businesses throughout the cannabis industry. Sergi represents clients across the United States and is regularly quoted on cannabis matters in the media. The new website from his team is txhemplaw.com. If you're new to the Texas market in hemp or cannabis industry, look no further than Sergi & Associates. Their legal team offers a broad range of legal practices, providing cost-effective, top-shelf legal representation with a big firm punch. in a personal small firm environment, specializing in hemp, criminal, business structure law, and civil litigation. Texas hemp laws are always evolving. Call Sergi and Associates at 512-392-5010. That's 512-392-5010. Or visit txhemplaw.com.
Introducing Wyatt Earp Premium Texas Cannabis Products. As a premier cannabis manufacturing company, at Wyatt Earp, we sell premium vegan, all-natural Delta-9 hemp gummies, as well as naturally derived cannabinoid hemp extracts and consumable hemp products. We believe the Creator gave us what we need right here. It's hard work, but from seed to table, it's the most rewarding work. Flower profiles with full flavor like chocolate chip, Illuminati OG, Dante's Inferno, OG Kush, Grape Frosty, and more. Quality organic craft flower, small batch boutique exclusive hemp strains, small batch hemp derived cannabis THC syrups and drinks, absolutely incredible exclusive small batch hemp derived cannabis THC edibles. Texas Most Wanted. Approach with caution. Highly potent. Call 888-420-HEMP. That's 888-420-HEMP. Visit WyattPerp.com today.
All right, welcome back to Blazed Weekly News. Shout out to producer Carl. Keeps us looking good every week here on the podcast. And be sure to follow and like the podcast if you'd like. Oh, I got a new book, 33 Reasons to Deregulate Cannabis. The book was given to me by Ted Reynolds, the author of this new book. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but he mailed me one the other day. I'm going to get Ted on to talk about his new book about deregulating cannabis. I saw that. I placed that out there on the desk here earlier. Good show this week. If you like and subscribe, the new magazine, guys, is going to print this Friday, so that'll be out next Friday, next Thursday. Our new issue is going to go to a tabloid format, so it's going to be kind of a little bigger than the Chronicle. It's going to be of tabloid size, so it's going to go up. I'm going to try something with that, see how folks like that. It's a little bigger to read. When you get my age, you got to have these readers on, and maybe that'll help. I don't know. But anyway, great show. Like and subscribe, and leave a comment if you want to jump in on the conversation as well. Again, thank you for our guests this week, Jay Maguire, Jasmine Brennan, as well as Heather Fazio, director there at the Texas Cannabis Policy Center. I reached out to Heather, just realizing, hey, it's September is coming up soon. That's when she did her policy thing with us last year. And so I reached out to her. I totally forgot that, she's got to wait for the policy to get figured out before she can have a policy conference.
Major roadblock.
But we'll all support you, Heather, on that. You got anything for them, Rachel, that you'd like to ask?
It was really the public outcry that got SB5 vetoed. And the fight's not over, so we need to still be calling our reps. And I'm just wondering, Jay, Heather, Jasmine, all of you could really chime in. Like, what do you guys think is the best way to approach our lawmakers at this point in the process? Like, should anything about, our approach be different this time around?
I think it should be, pretty similarly towards the end of the regular session, being really targeted with what we're trying to really advocate for. And so, I've spoken to a few people on the panel too, and Russ too, about in Houston, we're going to be doing like a lobby group training to where we can actually learn the process, and people who are not familiar with how to advocate for themselves, or not even just this issue, but any issues that come up later, or things that they want to advocate for hemp in the future, for any other sessions. We really are trying to make sure that people know how to actually speak to some of these representatives and how to reach out and, just really get to know the process itself.
That's a good point because, even for people at this moment who have not reached out to their reps, maybe it's time for them to, take a stab at it.
For sure.
It's definitely time. And I would encourage anybody that has a representative who voted in favor of prohibition, which is most of us, that we try to leave that at the door and give them some space to come onto the good side. Give them some space to adopt regulation. And you can do that by reaching out to them now, letting them know where you stand, asking them if they have questions. Many of the people in this movement are excellent resources to help them better understand this. And now that they're starting to come on this side of things, we need to help to welcome them in. And that starts with educating, that starts with making sure that they can see the vision, to see the path toward regulation, which the governor has laid out, and we can help to reiterate. Our website is TexasCannabisPolicy.org, and we've got resources available to make it easy to send a quick email, easy to make a quick phone call to your representative. A little goes a long way if we're all taking action across the state.
Yeah, I filled out my form on your website, I think yesterday or the day before. I've already done that this week once. And I was successful in getting a hold of Tallarico's office. They get messages to him, and then they even have called me back twice, over the earlier part of the year. I was very frustrated, as Jay might recall, early in the year, but I really, Jay explained a little more to this process, and I think we're all learning. I mean, certainly as a media guy here in Austin for 25 years, I've learned a ton about the political process just in the last 3 years, tremendously. And I'm very optimistic because the lawmakers now, Rachel, are going into stores. They're starting to ask questions. They're coming in, learning about the products. I mean, to see my rep Tallarico, a large part of his conversation with Joe Rogan last week was morality and theology and other various topics, but they did address the issue of hemp, and I think when lawmakers are given a platform, they're educating themselves, and that's encouraging, isn't it, Jay, Heather?
For sure. I mean, I've had some members, senior members, older guys reach out to me and ask me questions. They want to know things like, how is it that you can test positive for THC but not be under the influence of THC? And at what point do you stop being under the influence after you've used it? And that's a damn good question, because it's up to them to protect the public safety. People shouldn't be driving when they're high or operating machinery or showing up at work, creating liability for their employers. That's something that they have a legitimate interest in finding out. Unfortunately, I'm not the expert at that, but I, happen to know a few people, and I would call on somebody like Heather, for example. Heather's conference. So Heather's conference would have been perfect if we'd had all the legislators there back in like October, November, and just taught them everything. But I could have used a primer myself. The thing that you were talking about, Tallarico did a damn good job, I thought, on Joe Rogan, and he elevated this issue in front of an audience that has been hearing primarily prohibitionist messaging. Chad Hasty, the radio conservative radio, he's not a jock in West Texas, same thing. They're listening. So this is a battle for sort of the soul of the Texas Republican Party and the conservative movement, and I'm really hoping that the next iteration of conservatism doesn't reach back to Richard Nixon and go back to prohibition.
Yeah, that leads to my next question for any of you is, can we get new leadership from Republicans or Democrats to specifically run against Dan Patrick?
Yes.
But we definitely need some new leadership. Heather, I've often been of the conversation. I may have said this with Jay off air in our conversations. Jay and our Generation X, and we've seen this happen in Washington, where that boomer generation, Heather, is slowly fading out, and you're starting to see the younger guys get into office, and I'm very optimistic as a Generation Xer myself that some late 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds get in there and get a chance to shake things up. Any comment on you guys, just as what can we expect and hope for, responsible leadership from either party, in the coming, 18 months?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say that it's imperative that we actively participate in elections. The legislative session that we've been experiencing now is a result of the elections that happened in 2024. We have the consequences of those elections that we're dealing with now. We cannot let another election cycle go by without a Texas cannabis pack of sorts. We can't let another election cycle go by where we are not rallying volunteers into elections where it matters. Ideally, we end up with regulation at the end of this special session. And there are going to be no votes on that. And there need to be consequences for prohibitionists in their elections, especially in the primary. And there is more money coming into the industry now, into politics, which I think is a good thing. It's necessary. But also what this movement has is people power. We have people who are dedicated to this cause, who are willing to go out and block walk and organize, phone bank, make donations, but we have to rally them. And that's what we need to think about as leaders in this movement. How do we organize ourselves to be effective, just as effective as other industries in these elections, so that next time around we're sitting with a better positioning for the next legislative session?
And to Heather's point too, I really think it's important for people to keep that energy up. I mean, we're feeling it now. Keep it up. Try and get involved at any stage. I mean, at the grassroots level, like Heather said, block walking, phone calls, emails, postcards, all of that is going to be really important to just keep doing. Whether or not that's this session or this election cycle, next election cycle, it's going to be impactful for sure.
I think keeping people motivated is extremely important. We rank dead last in voter turnout of the 50 states. If you didn't know that, according to the Annette Strauss Center on Civic Life at the University of Texas, and we are like 45th in voter registration. And there's a reason for that. Like, people are turned off by politics, and partly I sometimes wonder if politicians like Dan Patrick aren't so obnoxious as to turn off a certain amount of the potential electorate and keep them from showing up. Getting people to show up is important. Getting all of our people to show up, though, means that this narrow slice of Texans who really care about this issue will have a disproportionately large impact. So, registering people to vote at the store level, for example, which is an idea that AJ Velador with Hilt had, damn good idea. Getting people to show up at the polling place, that's going to require some doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we have to do.
Well, I'm very proud of the industry, and I'm proud of all of you that go down and testify, give testimony. I think maybe I'll go down if they have another House hearing. I just commend everybody that goes down there and can stomach being around all of those guys at the Senate hearing. It's not something I like to watch. It's hard to watch that and be around it. But just a few minutes left. Any final thoughts from you, Rachel, on where we're at? And, my final question for the panel is, what do you expect in the next few weeks? This has got to get wrapped up, or we're going to be all sitting here again. I'll let you take your final thought here, Rachel.
Well, I love Heather's point about, giving a little grace to these lawmakers who voted for SB3 and actually taking the time, if they will engage with you, to bring them to the other side. I totally agree with that. I think that, voting for SB3 at this point is forgivable, but failing to educate themselves is not forgivable. And I think that we saw Representative Pat Curry visit a smoke shop in his district in Waco to go and ask the store owner the questions. And so I think that all of the lawmakers can really take a good example from that. And that's really it for me.
Well, thank you, Rachel. No, it's very optimistic. I'm a lot more optimistic in this even though things were pretty bad Tuesday morning there, Heather. But I'll turn to you and let you all three have your final thought. What can we expect in the next coming weeks? And are you guys optimistic or pessimistic? Because we've got to get something done as the governor has requested for lawmakers to get this handled. But we'll see in the coming weeks, and we've got some more hearings to go. And what are your thoughts, Heather, Jay, and Jasmine, as we go another 3 weeks here at least?
I am optimistic. The governor's interviews recently did give some cause for concern on the super low THC limit per serving. But overall, what he reiterated is that SB5, a prohibition bill, isn't going to cut it. He wants a real regulation bill. And I expect that we are going to see just that coming out of the House. And that makes me optimistic about the representation that we have in the People's House. So make sure you're reaching out to your legislators. The vote on SB5 is on Monday. Even though we expect the Senate to pass it, make sure they have heard from you. Make sure that you are sending an email, making that phone call. If you can come to the Capitol and visit their office before the vote at 10 a.m. on Monday. It really matters that we stay fully engaged throughout this legislative process, because even if we don't get the regulation bill passed in the first session, it's going to roll over into the second session. And, keeping up that energy, like Jasmine said, is of the utmost importance. Keep a positive attitude, make sure you stay engaged, and try to mobilize as many people as possible, because it's all on the line right now, and we need to make sure that we get it right.
Very proud of our fellow Texans. Jasmine, Jay Maguire, either of you got a final thought?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important too for everybody who's out there that's an operator, whether you're a retailer, manufacturer, anything in between too. Make sure you're staying vigilant, staying compliant. And then for everybody that wants to get involved in the process, definitely get involved. So in Houston, like I said, with the Houston hemp market, we've partnered with them. So Monday, we're going to have a lobby session. We're going to have two, one's at 1 p.m. and one's at 7 p.m. And we're going until we answer everybody's questions. So we're going to stay in contact, and definitely, even if you can't come to Houston, definitely reach out. We're going to try and keep everybody updated, and we're going to definitely use some of Heather's resources too, because she's absolutely great at this with her group. So definitely everybody keep that energy up.
It'd be cool, Jasmine, if you guys could somehow live stream that so you could reach more, people not just in your area. And also, just for Jasmine, I want to leave in the comments below of the show, we'll post this tonight on YouTube. But Jasmine, let me know how we can get folks to get in touch with you there in Houston, and we'll get your email there as well. Jay Maguire, your final thought, and just rally your final thought on the show, buddy. Rally the troops.
Yep, I think there's a point of order against SB5 based on germaneness. The governor's call was very specific: regulate, not ban. The ban language in SB5 automatically, to me, triggers a constitutional requirement that the legislature follow what the governor says. And he sets the agenda. The language is pretty clear. So I think that bill probably dies on the House floor if it ever makes it.
Well, thank you, everyone, for being on the show this week. It's a great panel having all of you on to talk about the new session. I think we're going to all be very close, like sitting in the hot tub bumping knees close if we have another session, Heather. This industry is... The longer they drag this out, the tougher and tighter we're going to be, and harder to deal with. So they better get this figured out, or if this drags out until September, they're going to really have a hard time, because we're coming together as an industry, folks. And I'm very proud of all of you, and thank you, all three of you, for being on the show this week, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now, shout out to Carl, my producer. He's been kind of working hard on some graphics. What's up, Carl? You've been keeping things looking smooth back there. How are you?
So far, pretty good, sir. Pretty good, man. Just running things back here, just doing my thing.
There's Carl from the command center, keeping us looking and sounding good back there, producer Carl. So
we're good, man. We're good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for what you've been working on there. Carl's making the show look slick. Subscribe, leave a comment below. And next week on the show, guys, is Rod Kite, our attorney buddy from North Carolina, is going to be on next week. Going to talk a little federal policy, and then all the stuff that's going on in Texas as well. Stay vigilant, my friends, and we'll see you next time. If you have a comment or would like to drop us a note below or send us an email, blazed@blazenews.com is the email. And we appreciate you guys. She's Rachel. I'm Russell. We'll see you guys. Great panel, great show. See you next week. Blaze Weekly News.